Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 24th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona-Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. Between them, they've covered Penn State for more than 75 years. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Anderly Penwell, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Salaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, we proudly support Penn State football. By Quattrini Rafferty, attorneys at law, Michael Rooch, peace of mind after an injury or illness. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona-Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Riskey. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm joined by the NitWits, Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Mike Irwin. And guys, this season just ended on just a sour note, losing 5 of their last 7 games. And kind of one of the themes that we saw, the short yardage. They just could not pick up short yardage situations on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, obviously losing a game to Michigan State to close the season with a land-grant trophy on the line. You know, I had a chance to talk to Sean Clifford afterward, and a bunch of us did, and he said, you know, we're better than this. But at the end of the day, it comes down to wins and losses, and they lost. The bottom line is they lost 5 of their last 7. Short yardage offense, short yardage defense have been issues all year, especially on the offense. Listen, you get into positions where you have 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. You can't pick that up in the Big Ten. You're not going to win a lot of games, and everybody kind of knew that.
You know, I think unfortunately this is who they are.
Yep.
You know, they're 11-10 in 2 years. Last year, you know, people wanted to give them a pass, and you know, for COVID, and you know, that was understandable. But now you lump in the trends and the fact that it's not, you know, the short yardage is maddening, and the play calling, and now they're under another coordinator that with the same results. But I think the big picture is they're a soft program. You know, they've lost their toughness in terms of being able to generate first downs. They've never been able to kill the clock under Franklin generally in the fourth quarter. So many come from ahead losses, and yesterday they weren't ready to play on defense. Their tackling was poor. They got back in the game, and then, you know, their play calling, it just was a frustrating end, but this is kind of who they are. We've seen this all year.
It's almost like a rerun. They underperformed, and they have all year. And every game day, I think the kids, they have the talent there. I just don't think the coaching is doing justice to those kids that are there. I think they've known all year long that they need a running attack, and they haven't developed one. I mean, you go back, and I think totally they lost 4 or 5 games by less than 4 points. They lost 1 game by 8. Ohio State's the only game that they lost significantly, and the other ones they could have easily won, but it seems like it's a rerun every week. The same issues come up every week, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost 5 games by a total of 21 points. And listen, I get, Neil, what you're saying about the defense, but I think generally speaking, over the course of this year, the defense has played well enough that they should have won most of those games. I am much more down on the offense, and especially the offensive line. And it's not as if that's some news flash. You know, they've cycled through offensive line coaches. At some point, I think they have to take a hard look at how they're recruiting offensive linemen and how they're developing offensive linemen. We look at what that strength program is doing for skill position players, for linebackers, for defensive linemen, in terms of putting them into the NFL. And then you look at what they're doing for offensive linemen, and the results aren't there. So I think they have to take a step back. Do you make a coaching change there? Do you not? I don't know that that matters. I think they have to take a big picture look at how they're developing offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, you asked him about the staff afterwards.
Tough time to ask.
Yeah, and he didn't respond, which, you know, we'll see what
That's fair.
shakes out in the coming days
Yeah.
and weeks. But yeah, as far as the defense, I think body of work, the defense pretty much has played well enough to win. But yesterday wasn't one of them, in my estimation.
Yeah, and I think to come from a head loss thing, I mean, one of the real criticisms of the defense is that when they're in position to lock down games with late leads, they're not able to do it. So listen, against Michigan State, they played terribly the first 2 drives, and then they rebound and play well, and then Penn State gets the lead and they can't hold it. So that's the one thing. But I think overall, I think we all have to admit, body of work, the defense has played well enough for this to be an 8-9 win team at least, if not 10.
Yeah, they very easily could be 11-1 and get the right breaks. But I mean, their pass offense has been effective, but their running game, like Mark said, has been a terrible.
And I'm kind of curious on that, Mike. You're being a former running back and played at Michigan State in '65, but you know, Kevon Lee, I thought was their best back most of the year. Yeah, he had a brutal fumble yesterday, and he hadn't played in the snow before. But you know, as it went on, I thought he was pretty good. And yet he fumbled. Are the holes not there? There doesn't look like there's a lot of holes, but should he be getting to it quicker?
Yeah, well, both I think is a combination. Well, you know, the holes aren't there. I mean, obviously they're running into people before they even get the line of scrimmage. I mean, these defensive players are coming right through. They're not even getting the line of scrimmage. I think Lee has a lot of potential, but obviously they're going to give him a lot of running room. But it is very important, and I'm not sure that they shouldn't have Clifford under center some of these times to hand the ball off, because they're handed in the backfield a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And like even on Lee's fumble, if you remember, he came over to get the ball from Clifford and he got hit right away. I mean, he had no room to run. Barkley's the only guy that could live through that stuff. I mean, at least he made some yardage when he got hit, but they don't have that type of back. But I think they have some decent running backs, but you know, obviously they're not making it at this point.
Well, guys, and then another issue was the special teams. We saw Jordan Stout missed a couple of kicks. Obviously tough weather, and then also John Lovett fumbled on a kickoff that led to another Michigan State score.
Yeah, and that's too bad, because I thought overall this season their special teams have played well. And in this game, Stout did an unbelievable job as a punter. But you can't, again, it's not as if you can ignore the fact that you miss a field goal, even in these conditions, and an extra point, and then you look at what the final score of the game is. And I'm sure Stout is the first one kicking himself, and Lovett, you know, they finally get some momentum out of the kick return game with Devin Ford, and everybody's been ripping him all year for fair catching, and then what happens, Neil?
I know, you know, and I even thought during the game, you're giving Ford some touches, and he was the only guy that picked up the short yardage, the 3rd and 1. They got it with him. I like that, and then Lovett fumbled. So, you know, it's almost like you plug one hole and then another.
And that's what happens when you're 7-5 and lose 5 of 7 games.
Well, let me ask you, with Stout kicking,
whatever.
I mean, he punts, he kicks off,
Yeah.
and he kicks. I wonder they should have a guy just for the extra points. I mean, they have guys, if that's all you did. Even then, I don't know, Franklin called a timeout. Here they are at the end of the first half, ready to kick a field goal. Stout's lined up to do it. They call a timeout.
He was
I said,
icing
are they
him.
trying to freeze Stout? What are they trying to do?
I think they brushed off the area during the commercial break. You still got to make the field goal no matter what they do. He explained it. He was asked. He said he was trying to bleed the clock down. He still called the timeout with about 6 seconds to go, but there was a minute left. He didn't want to give Michigan State any more time than they had to go up the field. But you know, almost no matter what they do in the situation, it didn't work.
It's unfortunate because Stout has had such a great year, but we got plenty more to talk about with this game. And coming up next, we're going to talk about James Franklin's new contract. That's next on Nittany Nation Overtime.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Salaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. And guys, we just dissected the loss to Michigan State, except the big news out of Penn State recently has been James Franklin's new 10-year contract.
Yeah. I think it was surprising to me that it was 10 years. He was already under contract through 2025, and, it's really a full commitment. I think, and it's ironic because to me this has been his worst year on the field. I mean, this has been the most disappointing season at 7-5 after you rise to number 4 in the polls. So, I don't think that, from what I'm hearing and what I felt like, the urgency wasn't there to let's lock him up for 10 years. I'm not saying he should be on the hot seat or fired. I don't mean that. And the way this thing shook out, whereas it started 9 weeks ago when he was riding high, you can kind of start to understand it. But I think it kind of distracted him and messed up the season, in my opinion. But he has really tried to push for better facilities, things that they had fallen behind on, and I think in that regard, it'll be a positive. It'll give a lot of stability, but I just think the timing was just a little off.
But let me ask you, he was making $7 million a year and had a contract through 2025. When you sign a contract, aren't you obligated to abide by that contract? I'm sure Penn State would have abided by the $7 million a year.
It was about $6 million.
But now they
a year,
extended
what
for
it
10
was
years. It's $7.5 million a year,
Yeah.
and I guess a retention bonus that they're going to give them. And to me, if you sign a contract, you got to hold to that contract.
Well,
but I think there was a panic situation that LSU and USC were looking for coaches, and they thought Franklin was in the mix there. So I think Sandy Barber and the administration came back and said, we want to hold on to this guy.
Yeah.
And he's done a great job recruiting and doing some other things in the community. So whether it's worth it for 10 years, we'll find out, I guess.
Nobody was breaking a contract. That's why there are buyouts built into these contracts, and that's what I think everybody's missing about this contract. The initial buyout is $12 million. It quickly drops down to $6 million within a year, and within a few years, it's down to a $1 million buyout. This is essentially a 4 or 5 year deal tops for him if he decides to get out. I think the surprising part is that Penn State guaranteed that $7.5 million for 10 years. That's basically guaranteed unless he's fired for cause. That's the surprising part. But let's face it, if this doesn't work out over the next 3-4 years, he's going to go somewhere else. He'll do the buyout. He'll go somewhere else. This isn't, yes, on paper, it's a 10-year deal. This is not a huge commitment, though. It's market value to see what he's able to do, if he's able to pull it off here in the next few years. And if he's not, I think he would be looking for a different opportunity, and he would exercise that buyout, which isn't cheating a contract. You're buying yourself out of the contract at $1 million when it comes up in a few years.
Right, and that's, even though, Mike, that's how a lot of people operate and a lot of industries operate, the coaching industry, unfortunately, isn't one of them.
And I think you look no further than LSU. Let's look at LSU real quickly.
Yeah.
Ed Orgeron, did LSU screw him by buying out his contract? I mean, no.
Won a national championship 2 years ago.
But that's my point. That's why these buyouts are part of these contracts, because if somebody wants to move on, okay, this is what it's going to cost you to move on. LSU wanted to do with Ed Orgeron, so they did it.
But maybe I misunderstood what a contract is. I just thought he signed a contract, they agreed to be there for a certain period of time.
But the buyout is part of the contract. Okay. So it says if you...
So who's buying who out then?
It depends.
That's what it boils down to.
Right.
So from his perspective, it starts off a giant number, $12 million, and then within a few years, it's down to a $1 million
So you
buyout.
think James is buying out his contract.
If he leaves, if he would leave in a couple years. I mean, the $12 million is
but
there.
what happened to the old contract?
Well, the school renegotiated.
It's
so
part and parcel of the way every single school does it. It's not like it's some surprising, you know.
What is with cause, though? That's what I'm curious about. With cause, to me, is not because you called the wrong play on 4th and 1.
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's
so
a question for Sandy Barber. What are the at-cause things? But you know, I think if we get back to the contract, you know, people have their thoughts about what James Franklin can do on the field, what he can't. What is undeniable is the foundation that he rebuilt after the place that he found this program coming out of where it was. He rebuilt, he made a commitment to getting better facilities. He got them to a point where they can compete with the best teams. Have they gotten to the point where they're beating the best teams? No, and that's what the next few years are all about. I think it was a smart move by Penn State to commit. I don't know that to commit 10 years at that, but I don't think it's going to come down to that if he struggles. I think he'll be looking for a different opportunity.
And I don't think he's going to struggle. I mean, he's out recruiting, and they're getting good players out there. And I mean, all these games. I mean, they very easily could have been 11-1 this year if they got the right breaks, and you know, if Clifford stayed healthy the whole time. Now they did make some coaching mistakes along the way, and we could probably have a whole litany of those. You know,
that'll be a separate show.
We could go about 2 hours with all those, I guess.
Well, guys, this has also been a good talk about James Franklin's contract. But as we discussed earlier in the show, potential changes to the coaching staff and evaluating their performance. That's coming up next on Nittany Nation Overtime.
The Nitwits are being brought to you by RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime, and as we alluded to before the break, guys, the coaching staff, Mike Yursich is in his first year as the offensive coordinator, and Brent Pry has been around for a while. What do you guys think of their job this season?
Well, I think Brent Pry has been, really the top assistant there over the longest period of time. I mean, obviously Moorhead came in and made a big splash, but he's been with James. He's really been James's right-hand man and confidant for 11 years when you go back to Vanderbilt. But if he's going to be a head coach at some point, would this be a time? Will there be an opportunity? Maybe in the South, who knows? I think that all these, there's going to be staff movement. We're getting used to that where we never had to deal with it before. Guys never left.
Yeah.
I'll be curious whether the time is right for Pry and whether there will be an opportunity that matches up for him.
Yeah, with respect to movement, realize we're taping this on a Sunday night, so who knows what's going to happen where. We have to be careful what we're talking about here. I do think we have to address Yursich. He was the guy that Franklin really wanted. They made a real quick move last year to get him in. I don't think anybody could look at this season and say that it was a success for that offense. They had their moments, but I'm anxious to see. I don't think there's going to be any quick change there. I'm anxious to see how the communication, the play calling, all of that thing improves going into a bowl and then going into next season, because a lot of the things that went down this year, the inability with the short yardage that we talked about, when should they run the ball? When should they have just given up on the run? Not having an effective backup quarterback at Iowa, being afraid to go to your backup against Illinois, all those things.
2-point plays.
Yeah, all those things. I mean, they really have to take a hard look at all that and maybe get those lines of communication settled before next season.
Who's doing all the play calling for their Penn State offense?
Well, that'd be Yursich.
Yeah.
Yursich is making all the calls.
I think James is involved with that, and that may be something that he has to self-examine. He admitted late in the season that he kept talking about staying committed to the run, and he admitted it again yesterday. And I think that's something that.
But I look at him on the sideline. He got a headphone on, but no speaker with him. You know,
He
I
has
don't know
a
how
microphone.
much say he has in making decisions on
They
going to
could
run the
talking about
ball. You're going to
James?
throw. Yeah.
Yeah.
They could switch that back, Mike, where you don't see it. Seriously, I mean, he can communicate with all the coaches on both sides of the ball if he wants.
So
to.
these, 1-yard plunges or whatever, you think that's James making that decision, or
Well, ultimately, he's responsible for that decision, whether he exactly made it or not. But I'd like to see him stick with Yurcich.
Yeah, I agree. That's the reason. That's where I
They
was
pulled the
going.
plug on Shiraka. You can't. I think that's one of the problems that happened this year. There's been too much sudden change organizationally, and
there won't be a lot of people
they
jumping in
gotta
line
fi-
to get there.
They
and
got to
have that
fix
job.
their offensive line, or they could have Lombardi in here, and it might not matter. Seriously.
Agreed there, guys. And well, when we come back, we're going to discuss where the program is right now in wake of James Franklin's new contract. That's coming up next on Nittany Nation Overtime.
The Nitwits are being brought to you by NovaCare, Altoona and State College. We proudly support Penn State football. By Quattrini Rafferty, attorneys at law. Michael Rooch, peace of mind after an injury or illness. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime, and it's time for our Nitwit of the Week standings. And Mark, you won this past week, so you're up to 2 footballs.
So do we take any away from Anderle because she didn't show up for the post-game show?
I think so.
Hey, one thing I would like to say, I think I would have been in trouble if Joe Nastasi was playing for Penn State in that Snow Bowl, because we know, occasional nitwit Joe, what he could do in the snow. They needed him against Michigan State, but I picked the Spartans and was
Yeah, he was
fortunate
better
to
at
do it.
the fake field goals. He picked the team 12-0 this year.
There you go.
Alrighty, guys, and then let's kind of go back a little back to James Franklin's 10-year contract. Where do you guys think the program is right now, and do you think they might have taken a step back this year and maybe even last year too?
Well, I think Mike hit on a good point in that they were in every one of these games. And so is that good enough? Absolutely no, it's not good enough. They have to get to the point where you're winning more of these games than you're losing. A couple of things that I would say is that they've gotten to a certain point where you are able to compete with everybody in the Big Ten. You're not going to go out and embarrass yourself. That's faint praise, I know. They're also recruiting very well. If they're able to maintain this class, it's probably going to be a top 5 class nationally. So those things are all working. But sooner or later, you have got to get it done on the field. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. That's what these next few years are going to be about. If he can get it done, he's going to be the long-range answer. If not, I think James Franklin will go looking for a job somewhere else, go looking for opportunity somewhere else.
Well, I mean, they're definitely paying him to solve the problems. They've established that. But, early in the season, they were using multiple sets with their tight ends, and they were better in short yardage. The team didn't improve this year, generally. I thought Clifford was a real warrior, and we'll have a pre-bowl show, and we'll get into some of that later on. But and Dodson was a great player. But I think generally we didn't see across-the-board improvement from the team.
It all started when Clifford got hurt against Iowa, and then it just, snowballed after that. Yeah, whatever I wanted to say, but anyway, and I really think that
But they got some big holes to fill too. I mean, you can look at, and I'll be curious what happens in the course of the next couple of weeks, because you're looking at a minor bowl. So, I mean, Brisker, Dodson, these guys are great leaders, but at what point?
A guy like Clifford has a decision to make. I mean, Ebiketie, what does he do in terms of, I think he's going out, but does he decide to play in the bowl? So it's going to be fun to watch these next few weeks and see how things unfold. It's going to be a lot different than I think we've seen.
In a way, it gives the younger players a chance too. If a Dodson decides not to go in, you're going to get another receiver in there. Give them an opportunity to learn,
Malik
at this
Mega.
point.
Yeah.
One of the other big issues, I think, was having a backup quarterback all year. And it come back to haunt us, I think.
Velo,
those things will be addressed, I'm sure.
Vayu proved that he could be that guy.
Yep, and obviously, so some good things to look forward to for next year. But anyway, we're out of time today. Guys, thank you for joining me, and we will be having a pre-bowl show. You've been watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Salaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, we proudly support Penn State football. By Quattrini Rafferty, attorneys at law, Michael Rooch, peace of mind after an injury or illness. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.